Welcome to the Audio Inc. Radio podcast, featuring interviews with the biggest names in rock and metal. Hosted by Anne Erickson.
Get inked. Visit Facebook.com/Audio Inc. Radio, Twitter.com/Audio Inc. Radio, and AudioIncRadio.com for more ink. Whew, that's a lot of ink. It's AudioIncRadio.com.
Can you imagine being ghosted by George Lynch? I know, right? I mean, it would be actually kind of an honor to be ghosted by George Lynch, but it's funny because in this interview that you're about to hear with the legendary George Lynch, he talks about something that kind of reminded me of ghosting, because I asked him about the new record, which he's got this great new record on the way with Michael Sweet of Stryper, with his Sweet and Lynch project with Michael Sweet, but it's called Heart and Sacrifice. And I love that title so much. I just love that name. So I was like, hey, why did you guys go with Heart and Sacrifice for the album title? And you'll hear it, but it was so funny. His response was about how he didn't even know that was the album title and that he's the last to know about anything. And then he even talks about calling up labels and trying to get copies of his own music and having them not get back with him and it never coming. And it just kind of reminded me of the idea of being ghosted as George Lynch. Who would ghost George Lynch? No one. That would be just stupid. That would be silly. But it's Anne Erickson. You're on Audio Inc. Radio. And yeah, I am really just very excited because it's always a big party when George Lynch is on the show. He is so fun, incredibly talented, super humble, and very prolific. I mean, he has 9 releases, he mentioned, coming out this year. 9. I can't imagine. I mean, I've got a few tracks with Upon Wings and my solo stuff coming out, and that's it music-wise. And I've got my hands full with that, but he's got 9 different records coming out with different projects. Very talented dude. And for this particular interview, we're talking about Heart and Sacrifice, the new release, out May 19th on Frontiers Music from Sweet and Lynch, which is that project, which I think is a really unique project. It features George Lynch and Michael Sweet, who are very different kinds of musicians, but they do come from kind of that same era of 80s melodic, big metal rock type music, but very different people, and they come together to make amazing music for all of our fun and pleasure. Very cool to have George Lynch back on the show. And we're going to talk about Sweet and Lynch. We'll talk about all of his other projects and even get into, just a little bit, religion. Because I find it fascinating that he has this project with Michael Sweet, who I've had on the show, who is a Christian, a very religious Christian person. And then you've got George Lynch, who's awesome and great guy, and he's also an atheist. So, I mean, you've got these two great guys. One is super religious, one's an atheist. And I just wonder, what kind of conversations do they have, you know, when they're not making music? Do they talk about the meaning of life and where do you go in the afterlife and stuff like that? I don't know, but we'll find out in this interview. As always, it's great to be here with you. And if you don't subscribe to the podcast yet, what are you waiting for? Do it right now. Just search Anne Erickson on Audio Inc. wherever you rock out a podcast. Hit subscribe and you'll be instantly notified of the next show featuring the biggest names in rock and metal music. If you haven't yet, check out my Patreon and become a patron. You'll have access to my private Patreon account and all of those extra goodies. So check that out, my private Patreon. You'll find the link in the show description. Check out my band Upon Wings at uponwings.com. And don't be a stranger. I would love to hear from you. Hit me up on social media, Twitter and Snapchat at Anne Erickson, Instagram and TikTok at Erickson Anne. And you can also find me on all my social platforms. Head to itsmeanne.com. That's itsmeanne.com. itsmeanne.com to link up on all of my social platforms. All right, let's do it. The great George Lynch.
Hey, this is George Lynch from Lynch Mob and 1,000 other bands, and you're listening to Audio Inc. Radio with Anne Erickson.
George, it's awesome to have you back on. You're coming up on the release of your 3rd record with Sweet and Lynch, which is Heart and Sacrifice, out in May. And the title really struck me. So tell me, what is the meaning behind Heart and Sacrifice?
Michael writes all his lyrics about how much he loves his wife and Jesus.
This is true.
That's what that's about. And honestly, I didn't know that was the name of the album.
Oh, really?
Nobody told me. It's weird to do these records, or at least when I do these records, I mean, I'm involved up to a point. And then once I finish all the work and I write everything and everything's mixed and delivered, I never hear from anybody. I usually never even get the record. So I never even hear it. I have to buy it on iTunes. It's crazy.
Wait a minute. Wait, hold up. Hard stop. So you're telling me that you don't get to hear like the final mix or anything, or do you mean that once it's all packaged up?
No, I'm thoroughly involved, heavily involved all the way up until completion, of course, because but once it gets delivered to the label, usually they lose my number. And like I don't really have much communication with them because I'm moving on, to the next project and whatever. They've just, but it's funny because like I didn't know that was the title, and sometimes they won't even send me a copy of the record, so I'll have to go purchase it online or something. But
that's so funny. No, I mean, I've done stuff where like I have to do voice work or something for a station, and then like I don't get any free hoodie or hat or whatever, so I kind of like know what you mean, but that baffles me. That's hilarious. I'm sure if you call the record label and you're like, hey, it's George Lynch, can I have my own record? They'd be like, sure.
I've done that, and it's funny. I should have recorded the call, and they would be like, what's your name again? And okay, we'll call back. I think it's just human nature. When you need something from someone, you're involved, and then once you don't need them anymore, they're dispensable. And that's just how people are. And it's because I remember another time I forget, I think it was Doc, and we went to the Grammys. We were nominated for something, and so we're very excited. And we had limo there and everything. It was a whole big deal, but it was like, the chariot turned into a pumpkin afterwards. It's like a ride home. I literally had to get a ride home from a fan in the parking lot. Like everybody has already gone home. They were locking up the doors, and I was just standing out there. I was like, "Where's this limo?" They go, "Oh no, they just got you a limo there. You have to."
Oh my gosh, that's hilarious. I've heard that that's the case with reality shows, that like they wine and dine you there, and then like once you're voted off or something, that you're kind of like hitchhiking your way back or something.
I'm not making this up. It's pretty crazy, but it's funny though now, afterwards, after the fact.
Right. It probably wasn't funny at the time.
No, struggle to get home. And, with one particular, it wasn't the only time that ever happened, actually. That's happened to me before. And then one time I got a ride from this really weird guy. So it was a painful trip, it was a long way home. It was like an hour and a half, in the middle of the night.
Oh my gosh.
Morning, and it just kept getting weirder and weirder. And just like, maybe I ought to just jump out of the car.
Oh, for sure. At least you're a girl. I mean, I can't imagine. I would never do that.
That was very strange. I was just like kind of thinking, hey, I was actually at one point thinking like, ask him to pull over, so I could take a bathroom stop, and then just not getting back in the car. This was before Uber or anything like that. So
okay. Yeah, I know. That's hilarious. Oh my gosh. Well, so you're learning the title of the new record. So I feel like I've done my job here. And and I'm wondering, well, tell me a little about the musical chemistry between you and Michael, because you guys have been doing this project for a while, and you guys just obviously have really great musical chemistry.
Like most of these remote projects in the last 3 years, we didn't, except for the first record, we haven't worked together in the same room on these records. And I'm sure you hear that a lot. It's pretty common now. And I would say that the reason I agreed to do this initially was because the way the record company explained it to me was that this kind of fills that gap where, that melodic rock Dokken kind of thing, where it's kind of a little bit heavy, but still got the the Don Dokken melodic side. And with me and Michael, maybe we can recreate that or serve that market, whatever you want to call it. And that was kind of the idea. And that's what we try to do. So I think it works.
Yeah. And you're very busy. You have so many musical projects. I'm wondering what motivates you to keep this project alive.
I don't know. I mean, when I was younger, the fact that you would even have a record deal would be such an amazing thing. So we worked so hard for that. And now that I'm, older, it's like I still never unlearned that. It's like I appreciate it. I appreciate the opportunity to make an album. To me, it's still fresh and exciting. And so if I can make 10 records, I'm like, holy crap, that's even better, So I never look at it like in a jaded way. I always really find it super exciting to be able to make an album.
That's really refreshing, because I would think that someone like you, who's been in the business a long time and you've had a lot of, hit records and stuff, that at some point would be like, oh, I don't want to do another. But it's really refreshing to hear that you still have that kind of like earnest feeling about it.
Yeah. And I'm not a billionaire, so it's like, it's still work, So there's that practical side too. I really like to stay busy. What else am I going to do? That's my job. So I like being busy. There's that too, you could sit around and do one record every 5 years, or you could do 3 records a year, which honestly, I work pretty fast and, sort of pride myself in my work efficiency. So, which you're forced to do that nowadays because, record budgets aren't what they were. And I find that, it doesn't really require a ton of time, to do these projects. They do take some time, and they are a lot of effort and everything like that. But it's like, it's just my job. I pride in my job. Also, I like to work with different people, so it affords me the opportunity to do all these, work with different, in different genres of music. So, for instance, I have a record coming out this month, I think, and I think it's coming out next week. Again, they haven't told me, but it's called The And it's an industrial-esque kind of record with, other guest artists and things like that. And so that's something really, really different for me. And I really like that kind of music. And I've always wanted to sort of find a way to be involved in it in some way. And so that's what this does. I make my records that are like Sweet and Lynch, that are really there to serve my core audience, which is like, melodic rock with some harder attributes and that kind of, like the Dokken model, I would say, or the Lynch Mob model. I do those kind of records, which I love to do. And then it allows me to do things that are more on the outside, like Project Infidelica, or The Banishment. So I'm able to kind of play with the music as well as serve my core fan base.
Yeah, I know, that's neat. Now, what was the record coming out next week again?
It's called The Banishment.
Oh, yeah, I have to check that out. No, I think that's great. I'm seeing more and more artists go outside of the genre that they're known for. And I feel like as a musician, after a while, you want to start doing different things. I think it's natural, especially if no one listens, most people at least, to like one genre of music forever. I'm thinking from my own perspective, actually, because like I sing in a metal band, but I just did a pop song and I was like, I don't know if anyone's going to like it who likes my band, but I just really wanted to do it. But I'm seeing like so many artists who are just going outside of the mold. And I feel like people are more accepting of it today than they were, I don't know, 5 or 10 years ago.
I think you're right, because I've done stuff like this in the past, in past decades, and it was not as accepted. Now, I was expecting to hear a lot of negative reviews and get a lot of resistance and a lot of shit talking. And actually, that hasn't happened with these later kind of stranger records that I've done, like The Banishment. People like it, And so I'm like, wow, that's refreshing. That's cool. I can see, like if I was like this huge artist, like an AC/DC or Judas Priest or Van Halen, then you don't want to really change it up.
That's refreshing to hear that you also feel like people are more accepting of it. Maybe it has something to do with so much music being online and, people inevitably, whereas years ago, maybe they would listen to one radio station or just the records they bought. Now they just happen to stumble upon other genres that they end up liking online.
I hope that's true. I always assumed that was true about most people, that, people would want to see the artists that they grew up with and loved kind of evolve, much in the way that Jeff Beck evolved for me, who I'm a gigantic fan of, most guitar players are. but I was there, from the beginning. It was one of the first records I ever bought, and felt an affinity towards his style and sort of modeled myself after him and all these kinds of things throughout my career, and was resistant to watch him change his style, but eventually, realized that I was wrong and he was right. And the same went for Zeppelin. When Zeppelin came out with the first two records, I was all in, and of course they were the model of our universe at that point. Me and my friends would just listen to their records religiously and try to be like them. And then they started to kind of change, and become more adventurous, in the third and the fourth and all that, as the records went on. And I lost interest in them, if you can believe that. Of course, now, retrospectively, I look back and I'm like, oh, they were genius. Page was a genius, and these were incredible albums and everything, but I didn't see it at the time. So I was resistant initially. So I can see that with people. You don't want Coke to change its recipe. You don't want Judas Priest doing reggae music. I mean, our AC change their formula. We just want more AC/DC. But I'm in a unique position, not a unique position, but in a different position where, I'm kind of known for a thing that I did in the 80s, but yet I have that flexibility because I'm not, it's not set in stone, So, I don't know if people are going to have enough patience with me to listen to everything that I do, because I've done so many records. I've got 9 releases coming out this year.
Oh my gosh.
It's, from a business standpoint, it's stupid. It's really dumb, but not smart, because you're just overwhelming people. They can't possibly focus on all that, and then they'll be like, "Who the hell are you, dude? Give us," it's like being and putting out 9 different things, just throwing them out there and expect, no, you want to sort of build a brand. So I sort of ignored all that, and I just went in and just did all these records because I could, and I'll let people sort it out, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's coming from your heart. And a lot of times people who do all the right things business-wise, it doesn't work for them anyway.
Yeah, I mean, maybe taking a more scattered approach. Not that this was methodical and I thought about this, but maybe taking a more scattered approach makes sense in the sense that you kind of throw everything out there, and maybe something, somebody will pick up on something in a big way. Maybe something will catch on with the masses. I don't know. I mean, I don't really expect that, but I have my core audience. I do okay. I do pretty well. People pay attention to my records, and that's good enough for me. But there's always a chance that something might, kind of just catch the larger, just world at some point, and people might kind of wake up and go, holy shit. It's funny, some of these records we're doing recently, it's like the End Machine. I'm working on just finishing up an third End Machine record with Jeff Pilson, and this new singer Girish from India, believe it or not. This guy's unbelievable singer. And what we found, Jeff and I have talked about this, what we think we're doing is still trying to perfect that formula from the 80s. And we're finally figuring it out, just 3.5 decades too late. We're like, dude, if this record had come out in 1988, we would be the biggest band in the history of the universe. But we're still stuck on that trajectory, but it's pretty funny.
That's awesome. I can't wait to hear it. I do like the stuff you've done with the End Machine, and it sounds like your new vocalist is killer.
He's unbelievable. I mean, we have to pinch ourselves when we're listening to it too. It's just so ridiculously, disgustingly good. He's like, I mean, on every level. I mean, from his look to his writing, for that era of music and style of music. I mean, she's phenomenal. And just, I mean, he's an insanely great technical singer, but he has the Paul Rogers blues chops and all the feel and R&B kind of thing that you want to, where rock comes from. He still has all that, which is just, it's mind blowing.
Wow.
I mean, you couldn't have designed a more perfect singer for what we're doing in a laboratory.
That's awesome. Artificial intelligence is here.
Yeah, this guy's flesh and blood.
Cool. Well, something that fascinates me about your project with Michael Sweet is that it seems like, and, I don't know, I don't hang out with you guys, but it seems like you guys might be on the opposite end of the political and religious spectrum. And I'm wondering, what advice you have for people who have friends who maybe don't agree on politics and religion, but they want to still be friends and get along.
Yeah. I'm actually not sure about Michael's politics. We never really got into that because it really doesn't affect us, our work, because we don't address it in our music. And I am obviously not writing. I'm not the voice of the band, so I'm not writing the words. So I'm not getting the messaging across. I'm not involved in that. So it's not my realm of even, we discuss things, but at the end of the day, ultimately, it's up to Michael what he wants to sing about, what he wants to write about. But we have discussed religion, but almost in a funny way. It's sort of a running joke that I'm the atheist and he's the Christian, and of course, we can play with that. And we've discussed the idea of doing a record where it's both, it's a kind of a yin and yang approach where half the record is kind of the point of view I would address, and the other half is the point of view he would address. And we kid around about doing that, but you couldn't really do that because I don't sing, and I couldn't ask him to genuinely sing something he doesn't believe in. That would be, how would he do that?
Right.
How would he sing the point of view that he doesn't agree with? That would be uncomfortable and weird to ask somebody to do, and sort of disingenuous. So I don't know how that would happen. But the idea of doing a concept record like that is, we've talked about it, but it isn't really doable. But
right.
Michael's a wonderful guy, and he knows I'm not a bad person, so we're fine. It's not really an issue or anything. But I take some of the religious content of the messaging. Sometimes I take it with a little bit of a grain of salt, but it's okay. As long as you're not hurting anybody, I just think as long as you're not doing any harm, he was more an extreme religious kind of person where he was advocating for things that harmed people in the name of religion. Yes, I would have a huge problem with that.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great way to put it. I mean, it's funny because, I'm Christian, and like a lot of my friends are atheists. I've dated like a lot of atheists, and I feel like if someone's like a humanist where they want to do the right thing and they're a good person, I mean, that's the core of like us getting along, if that makes sense.
Yeah, rather than imposing, kind of a religious, in sort of indoctrination and injecting it into our politics in the way that we manage our affairs and have to live under some religious authority or something. That would be frightening to me and wrong. But that's
totally
not what people like Michael are advocating for. They just have a personal belief that helps them get through the day, and that's fine. I of course have know lots of people, or know people that their belief in God and their religious convictions have saved their lives from drugs and alcohol, for instance.
Mm-hmm.
And that's it gives them something to live for. Or people that were suicidal, or whatever. They found religion, and it saved them. And so I have family members like that. So I do. I'm not saying that religion as a whole is not a harmful thing, but used as a tool for evil, I don't think it's a good thing to do that.
Yeah, 100%. And well, you mentioned you have 9 things going on. I was going to ask you, like, what other projects do we have to look forward to this year? So, go for it. List all the many things you have going on.
First one, as I mentioned earlier, the first one that'll be coming out is The Banishment later this month. We get Tommy Victor on the record. He's on 2 songs from Prong. We got Richard Patrick from Filter guesting on it. Other guests from various kind of more underground industrial bands. Devik Zell is our main vocalist. And we have a video that's out right now. It's been out for probably a good month or so for the first single. Then after that, I've got an instrumental record coming out called Guitars at the End of the World. That's been done for a while, and they're going to be putting that out sometime this spring. We're just finishing up a Lynch Mob record with our new singer, Gabriel Colon. And let's see, we've got The End Machine coming out closer to the end of the year that I already talked about a little bit. I've got a record by a project called Ultraphonics with Corey Glover from, we've done this will be our second record. And Pancho Tomaselli from War is on the record. And that record is kind of interesting. It was just something we did pre-pandemic where we went into a old analog tape studio for 3 days and just sort of went crazy.
Cool.
Jammed and, sat down with pianos and experimented with weird instruments and like Corey sang through like a guitar rig, with a giant pedal board and old vintage amplifiers and used all these weird effects. And it's just
That's so cool.
Crazy, strange experiment. And so that's coming out sometime. I don't know. We don't have a release date. Then I've got a second Heavy Hitters record coming out, which is with the singer. God, I can't remember his name.
You have so many projects. It's like, who is this person?
It's the Rolling Stones. His name, the other guy. How could I forget that? Singer, Stones. Bernard Fowler. Duh. Okay, so anyways, Jeff Pilson and I worked together on these Heavy Hitter records for Cleopatra Records. And what they are is we take an era of music like R&B, rock music, and then we do covers of those in our style, hard rock style. And this record, we used Bernard Fowler as the singer, and he's unbelievable, R&B gospel style singer. It's fantastic. That'll be coming out. It's called Heavy Hitters 2. So what did I cover? Lynch Mob, The End Machine, the instrumental record, The Banishment, Ultraphonics, Heavy Hitters. The label is putting out Lynch Mob Rebel, repackaging and putting that back out because when we initially came out with that record, there was big problems with the label at the time with their distribution, not to get all wonky and boring, but for whatever technical reason, the record did not really get distributed well, or people weren't really even aware of that it was out there. So they mishandled it pretty badly. They're repackaging that and putting that back out.
I was going to ask, so like Lynch Mob, the name is back.
It is, yeah. I'm a little conflicted about that, but I kind of go with the flow, and it's a brand I built, and it's my last name. So I mean, I understand the negative, the negatives for sure, and agree with the negatives, but yeah. Show my driver's license. And there's another reissue. I think it's like a TNN record. So a few of these releases that are coming out this year that I'm affiliated with are reissues. But the main bands, in fact, the only project I'm not doing another record this year with that I've been involved in recent years is KXN. It's the only one that we may do another one at some point, but at this point it's not in the works. But and of course there's the Sweet Lynch record, which is what we're doing the interview about. So right there, I think there's like 7 or 8. I think there's 1 or 2 I'm missing.
Wow. No, well, you're a man of many talents. And I have to say, whenever I have you on the show, people are so excited. So I'm really excited I got to talk with you again. You have a really huge fan base, and they're very passionate about all of your work.
Well, thank you for having me on. I appreciate it.
George Lynch, thank you for being an awesome guest on my show. It's always a big party when he's on. And George, you're welcome back anytime. He's so humble. What a humble dude. Down to earth, just awesome person, an extremely talented musician. I'm just always in awe of his playing and the fact that he can do so many different styles and he remains so motivated to do just a ton of great music that we can all enjoy. Check out his new record with Sweet and Lynch, which is called Heart and Sacrifice, out on May 19th. And yeah, once again, thank you, George, for being an awesome guest on my show. And if this is your first time listening to my show, to the podcast, thank you. And I would love for you to stay and hang out a bit longer. Just subscribe. Search Anne Erickson on Audio Inc. wherever you rock out to podcast. Hit subscribe and you'll be instantly notified of the next show featuring the biggest names in rock and metal music. Don't be shy. I would love to hear from you on social media. Reach out to me, Twitter and Snapchat at Anne Erickson, Instagram and TikTok at Erickson Anne. And you can also head to itsmeanne.com. That's itsmeanne.com. Itsmeanne.com to link up on social media. If you aren't a patron yet on my Patreon page, it's a lot of P's, patron on Patreon, something like that. I would love for you to be up there. It's a fun way to be more involved, be part of the show, and you'll get access to my private Patreon account. You'll get some previews, exclusive previews and stuff like that. You'll find the link in the show description. And finally, check out my band Upon Wings at uponwings.com. All right. As always, you are amazing. You rock. Thank you for being here and being a part of my life. Until next time, be safe, God bless, and we'll rock soon. It's Anne Erickson on Audio Inc. Radio.
It's Audio Inc. with Anne.
Thanks for listening to another episode of the Audio Inc. Radio podcast. Subscribe to our channel so you never miss an episode. Get inked online at audioinkradio.com. I'm Anne Erickson for the Audio Inc. Radio podcast.